What kind of books do you write?
Well, if you ask the ordinary run-of-the-mill reader, if there is such a guy or such a gal, I guess that I write horror novels. I think that what I actually write are suspense novels.
What's the difference?
If you didn't already know who that was Stephen King, an American author of over 60 books and many, many short stories. Most of America and even the world know him as the King of Horror. He debuted his first novel, Carrie, in 1974, which 2 years later got turned into the iconic film Carrie, which established him into the quote-unquote horror genre. He's the second most adapted writer of all time, behind Shakespeare. Some of his films that you might be familiar with, Carrie, The Shining, and the more modern version of It is very popular in our media. Stephen King may be known as the King of Horror, but his work transcends the genre of horror itself. He doesn't seem to fit in the boxes of auteur theory or genre theory, as he is an implied author for so many films. He toys with the idea of what benefits and subtracts from genre. He's got some genre-bending adaptations from his books, including Stand By Me and Shawshank Redemption. He uses semantic and syntactic tools to tap into suspense, coming-of-age, thriller, and other everyday themes. Now let's first look into the semantic tools. Iconography is a huge factor seen in many of the adaptation films from Stephen King's novels. Characters that add to the horror genre are monsters, as seen in these clips from the 1990 miniseries It and the 2017 film It. The monsters are best demonstrated, especially with these clips, with these scary clowns. On the other hand, comedic relief characters seen in the same movie, It from 2017, suggest fitting into other genres, especially with Richie's endless list of one-liners, puns, mama jokes, and other things.
Go blow your dad, you mullet-wearing asshole! And look at this motherfucker! He's leaking hamburger helper!
Another factor of iconography is settings. A setting that adds to the horror genre that is shown a lot throughout the novels of Stephen King and the adaptations is suburbia becoming unsafe. We can see this in the clip from The Mist, the scene of Georgie running down the street of the suburbia homes in It from 2017, and in the 1986 Stand By Me film. However, there are many other settings in these films that can suggest that they fit into other genres. For example, we can see a high school prom in the movie Carrie from 1976. This setting can usually be seen in comedies, rom-coms, and more. In the film Shawshank Redemption, we can see the prison setting, which usually doesn't fit into the horror genre. And iconography wouldn't be the same without the images that audiences see on their screens when they watch these movies. Some of these images that add to the horror genre is blood, such as the blood scene in the 1990 miniseries of It with the balloon popping in the sink, in the movie Carrie when the blood pours on her head, and in the movie The Shining from 1980 with the blood-filled elevators. Another popular image associated with horror is dark shots, as we can see in the film Pet Sematary. On top of that, another image that can fit into this is fog and mist, which can be seen in the movie The Mist, as well as in the sewer scene from It from the 1990 miniseries. Images also seen in these Stephen King films can fit into other genre boxes, such as romance or rom-coms. We can see this in the kissing scene from It from 2011 and the romantic dancing scene in Carrie. Another semantic tool being used is the use of conventions.
Where did you...
A huge convention that adds to the horror genre is jump scares. Gotcha. As you can see, this is seen in Carrie, also in Pet Sematary, and in the 1990 It miniseries.
Kiss me, fat boy.
On the other hand, some of these movies have conventions such as kids riding on bikes, as seen in 2017, which can point to more coming-of-age films. And then we can see train tracks with the kids, which points to more adventure and also coming-of-age. And the last semantic tool we can see is plot formulas. The plot formula of missing/abducted children adds to the horror genre a lot. We can see this in It, as he gets abducted by the clown It. We can also see this in the movie Stand By Me.
Who gives a shit if they ever find him? I don't.
On the other hand, however, a lot of plot formulas in a bunch of these movies have character relationships that suggest it is not just horror. For example, the romantic relationship between Bev and Ben in the movie It, which was previously mentioned. Then we can see in this clip right here, bullying and social hierarchy, which can be shown between Henry and the bullies. Bullying and hierarchy can also be shown in the film Carrie. In this clip, when we see the mean girls making fun of Carrie after she gets her period for the first time in gym class. And finally, we move on to the syntactic approach being used, which is the deep thematic meaning of the media. First, we have the horror themes, which our first example is Man vs. Monster, which is best demonstrated in the 1990 miniseries of It, when they go against the monster of the clown to kill it. Then we can see natural versus supernatural, especially in the movie The Dead Zone, where his powers are first seen when he exits the coma.
Amy.
Amy is my daughter's name.
And finally, in Carrie, when she uses her telekinesis against her mom. And now for non-horror themes.
This is really a good time. It must.
A blast.
And they won't say that for long, because our first non-horror theme is the loss of innocence and maturity versus immaturity, which is best shown in Stand By Me, as the boys are about to discover a body that will take some of their innocence and unfortunately make them mature in a horrible way. The next theme we see that's not conventionally in horror is child abuse and neglect. We can see this in 1990's It, when Bev's father is abusive towards her after finding out she got a love poem from a boy. We can also see it in Carrie as we see the abuse from her mom. And finally, we can see the theme of grief, best seen in Stand By Me, as they grapple with the horrible thing that they have just seen, as well as the death of his brother.
Beautiful. I miss him, Chris. I really miss him.
All of these semantic and syntactic approaches show us that Stephen King, his work, and the adaptation films that came from him go past horror. Stephen King is undoubtedly talented, but even he doesn't put his work in the box of just horror. His work uses the mise-en-scène of horror, but overall ties in very real-life themes. If all there was to Stephen King's work was a monster without the characters responding trauma, loss, and other real-life themes, the monster would not scare anyone, and it would be boring, because it doesn't seem as believable without that stuff. Stephen King is more than just the king of horror. His influence on media overcomes the whole genre theory and bleeds into other film and television styles and elements like suspense, thriller, coming-of-age, nostalgia. King didn't just change the horror genre. He changed pop culture and history as a whole.